Army Moves is a very fitting title for this game. You really need army moves in order to get anywhere in this game, because this game is very difficult.
This is the third game that Dynamic has released on the C64, and the second involving Imagine software for programming. Also, it's supposed to be pronounced Dynamic, not Dynamic. This is because Dynamic is based in Spain, and the official language there is Spanish. So therefore, it's supposed to be pronounced Dynamic and not Dynamic. But even then, Dynamic is just a Spanish word for dynamic, so I don't know what's the point of me making this. Imagine Software is the arcade division of Ocean Software, though it used to be a separate company.
Best known for games like Arcadia and BC Bill, but they ended up in Ocean's hands due to obvious reasons.
In the game, you play as Dadork, who is a member of the SOC, the Special Operation Corps. And after many years of training, he goes on his very first mission, of course as a one-man team.
He must go through 7 sections in 2 parts. 1 where you use a buggy, 3 where you use a helicopter, and 3 on foot segments. 1 which has some really bad platforming, another where you survive a barrage of enemies, and a final section where you go through a surprisingly linear maze to get through the secret vaults and siege the documents. The first section, where you drive a jeep or a buggy, they're kind of the same thing, you must jump over pits and shoot missiles at helicopters and cargo trucks or lorries. As the gameplay suggests, this is obviously a spin on the game called Moon Patrol, the classic Williams game developed by Irem. You'll notice right away, aside from the controls which I'll talk about later, is that the enemy placement is randomized and is usually pretty bad. There are instances where helicopters will shoot slow-moving projectiles which you must avoid. Once you jump over them, you better be careful for those pits,
because if you go a single pixel over the edge, you fall and go 6 feet under. Jumping in this game feels kinda floaty. This could be an okay thing for the pits, but can be a pretty bad thing for the slow-moving projectiles that the helicopters shoot, because you couldn't really predict your jumping height. Once you press up on the joystick, you go up all the way. So therefore, predicting your jump can be a bit of a pain. Other than that, the controls are pretty simple. Up is to jump, down does nothing, left brakes, and right goes forward. The fire button shoots your missiles up, and the spacebar shoots them down. Yep, it's one of those games where you have to use the spacebar. Of course, most computer games use that type of control scheme. However, this does make the game a little bit unpleasant to use on 2600 style controllers, since you really need to use the spacebar in this game. I recommend going for a flight stick type joystick in order to play this. The second section, where you fly a helicopter, has some really nice parallax scrolling for a C64 game from 1987. But the major problem is, why are there white clouds in a dark sky? I mean, the C64 doesn't have that great of a color palette, but still, this kind of feels really weird. The second section is by far the easiest in the entire game. That mostly comes from the fact that the enemies aren't placed in such terrible ways compared to the other flying stages. Also, there isn't really a whole lot of enemies, and the ground enemies are pretty pathetic. Though that doesn't mean that the enemy placement is still not randomized, because check this out. This section ramps up the difficulty quite a bit, though not much that I would really complain about. That animation is real smooth. The fourth section is the worst in the entire game. Well, the second worst, because I got something to prepare for you. This is where the enemy placement gets real shitty, but at least the ground enemies are a little bit more of a threat to you than the others. The jets have this pattern where they move to the other side of the screen, not directly towards you but behind you, and then shoot as soon as they move to you. It took me almost 30 minutes just to get through this section due to the shitty enemy placement. At the end of the 4th section, once you rack up your bonus points, you get a code which lets you progress to the final 3 sections of the game.
And oh boy, they are a special treat indeed. Once you enter your code, you choose between music and sound effects like in the 1st section, and press fire to get into the game. Now, Dead Hal is on foot instead of on transportation. And my god, I wish it was all transportation sections, because these platforming sections are really bad. Of course, you move left and right, jump by pressing up, you crouch by pressing down, and fire shoots your gun, and space throws a grenade, which by pressing space, the Dead Hal comes to a complete stop, and then throws the grenade in an arc. This makes trying to aim with it really hard. And also, it's almost completely useless. I only really used it a couple times in the game. Instead of shooting the birds, the bird moves up as you shoot. So, instead of killing it, you must get it just about enough where you could jump to the next platform. The jumping is atrocious. In fact, it's the exact same jumping mechanic used in Game Over. When you press up to jump, you go in an arc. You cannot go straight up. You can only go in an arc in the direction you are facing. There's also these eyes. I don't know what they are, but they throw grenades at you. And oh my god, the collision detection when that happens is horrible. Like, just look at this. Just look at this. How is that even remotely possible? The 6th section is one of the most unfair, one of the most frustrating, one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in a C64 video game. You thought that the fight with Paul in the C64 version of Yara Kung Fu was bad. No. This is where I crossed the line. First we got these Watchmen. Fuck these guys. Fuck these guys. They throw grenades constantly like it's no tomorrow, and the grenades have extremely terrible collision detection, and you can barely avoid it half the time. The soldiers just keep on coming. They keep on coming. They keep on going. Sometimes they shoot projectiles out of nowhere. Green Beret did that better, and that was actually good. This is just bullshit. This is complete and total trash. But they just keep on going. The soldiers keep on going. They just fuck with you over and over and over and over again. It's just maddening. It's absolutely maddening. Like, who designed this? It just keeps on going. It keeps on going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I don't want to play this. I don't want to. Ah! Finally. I got to the last section. What now? The last section is pretty hard, but in comparison to the last section, it is marginally better than the last one. Not by much, but a little better. This section is kind of like the last one, but however, instead of being scrolling, it's screen by screen. You can't jump, so crouching is the only way to avoid enemy fire. You press up to go through doors, and down to climb down ladders. You can also go up by just pressing up. But you don't really need to use that a whole lot. The only real major problem that isn't the enemies is the doors. The doors open sometimes when enemies are in them. Though after a little bit, they close automatically, and once they close, You gotta go back the screen before going to the screen that you're supposed to go into the door to. Though the enemies are likely to pop back out eventually, that's not likely. You finally get to the vault, and you get a congratulations screen. Press fire, and it puts you back into this hell screen. Overall, Army Moves is an incredibly tough game. Though that's mostly due to poor game design, though others are probably, even if the issues fixed, still would have been pretty difficult. There are definitely way worse Commodore 64 games out there, but this game hasn't really aged particularly well, and honestly isn't really worth playing unless you're a masochist or just a fan of C64 games, like me. Excuse me, I have much bigger things to do. See ya.